Willkommen zu einer neuen Folge von Meikes Raumzeit. Live vom Forrester CX EMEA Summit 2026 in Amsterdam. Wir leben in einer Zeit, in der Bilder, Stimmen, Nachrichten und sogar Identitäten täuschend echt erzeugt werden können. Was real ist und was nicht, lässt sich immer schwerer erkennen. Die Folge? Vertrauen ist nicht mehr der Ausgangspunkt. Misstrauen wird zur Standardeinstellung von Kundinnen und Kunden. Für Unternehmen ist das längst mehr als ein gesellschaftliches Problem. Wenn Kundinnen und Kunden nicht mehr glauben, was sie sehen und hören, verändert das ihr Verhalten. Sie kaufen weniger, teilen weniger Daten und hinterfragen jede Interaktion. Gleichzeitig bringen Unternehmen immer mehr generative und agentische KI in ihre Customer Journeys. Wie lässt sich unter diesen Bedingungen Vertrauen überhaupt noch aufbauen? Und welche Rolle spielen Responsible AI, Governance und die Art, wie Unternehmen ihre KI für Kunden und Kundinnen erlebbar machen? Darüber spreche ich heute mit Enza Iannopollo, Vice President and Principal Analyst bei Forrester. Ihre Forschung verbindet Datenschutz, Responsible AI, Governance und Vertrauen mit den konkreten Auswirkungen auf Kundinnen und Kunden sowie auf Unternehmen. Da Enza Englisch spricht, wechseln wir für das Gespräch jetzt in Englische. Enza, a warm welcome to this podcast. Happy to have you here. I will always start with my first question that you must just briefly introduce yourself.
My name is Enza Iannopollo. I'm a VP Principal Analyst at Forrester, and I cover privacy, which is really my first love. I've been working on privacy for a long time, so privacy regulation, but also how organizations can leverage technology to make sure that they are compliant with the requirements of the law. Then I am one of the original author of the Trust Imperative. So we launched the research in 2021. It's all about trust, what really make consumers, employees trust a brand or trust their employer. What are the levers? What are the key ingredients of that trustworthy relationship? And finally, I also cover AI governance. So looking at all of the AI and how to do it in a way that is ethical and that is trustworthy.
All topics we're going to dive into. But my first question is actually more related to as well. You met last year at the CX Summit in London, and we spoke about the question why consumers did not get trust companies using AI. Now today, you said in your keynote, which is even a more stronger diagnosis, you say, does distrust has now become the default? What has changed in the behavior of consumers or companies, and how come that this is actually what you see?
I think so first of all, now we've been into this AI journey for 3-4 years now. So I think, and I'm really thinking of when OpenAI brought to the public ChatGPT. That was the moment where really consumers started to use, experience, think about AI. AI existed much before then, as we know, but really when it came in front of consumers, it was, I think, when there was that opportunity to, for the first time, try that generative AI. And now we have data. We have been exposed to it for a number of years. We have seen companies putting the AI in front of their customers. And that, I think that gave us an opportunity to explore a little more what is happening in consumers' attitude, their perception, do they trust? So what we know this year very clearly is that risk perception plays a very important role in shaping trust. We knew about context before. We knew that trust is really dependent on the country you're in because there are cultural elements in it. We knew that the vertical a company was in, if you are a bank, consumers expect some things from you to trust you. But if you are a grocery retailer, it's a different story. Other components are important to consumers. So we knew about context and cultural element of trust. And now AI really is bringing that risk perception to the forefront. And in fact, when we ask, and this is interesting, who do you trust in general? We know they're going to say highly regulated verticals. I remember top of my mind, European consumers would say 54% of them would say we trust highly regulated verticals. Then we bring AI into the picture.
Yeah.
which companies do you trust to be able to manage AI effectively, to manage the risk properly, those percentages drop by 50%. Trends remain as stated. So most trusted, the highly regulated verticals are very trusted, remain the most trusted with AI, but is half of the consumers trusting them because AI changes a little bit the expectation. I think this is the elements that we are bringing to the picture that wasn't as clear in the past, but risk perception relating to AI shapes a lot of those trust dynamics for consumers.
Was it something that you kind of expected, or were you surprised by that outcome? Because when you think about everyone I know in my surroundings with companies, we all used AI as well in our private daily. But I hear numbers that they say even nowadays, when it comes to the reviews or kind of summaries, a text you read, or giving a recommendation, they trust AI sometimes more than what others tell. Did that surprise you? Is that actually a contradiction or no?
I think there is this wrong assumption. Oh, consumers don't care. They say they're worried, but they then, they do things, they don't care. And I think the fact that instead, and the data shows it very clearly, risk perception is something that really shapes the way people trust, and AI is part of that. This is really part of this conversation. And so that is surprising because it's clearly saying if your assumption is that consumers anyway, they don't care, you're wrong. The risk perception is that it really shapes how they think about trust and think about company. So that I think is very interesting. The second element is you have a fact. When we say only 16% of European consumers today trust information provided by AI, is a very specific thing that we are telling you. It says a lot. When we say that only 17% of these European consumers can tell when they are exposed to AI, it means that a huge amount of them doesn't know. What this means they want to know, and they like transparency. We want to know when we are exposed to AI because we don't know. And then AI gives the information, but actually I don't know if I trust that information. Most of them don't trust that information. And so this is how distrust comes to happen, is a lot of questions about is that information accurate or not? Is this a hallucination, or is information that I can rely on? This is bringing a lot of those questions. I said in the speech, people cannot believe anymore what they see because of deep fakes and misinformation. They make decisions on information that they know is not certain because these are probabilistic methods. And so if I ask you today, you answer one way. If I ask you tomorrow, you're going to answer the opposite way. So difficult. And we have to rely on tools that we fundamentally don't understand. This is what is distrust. If I need a recommendation about the next movie and that is done with AI, I trust it. Many of the people do because the use case is at such that they can handle it.
It's okay. I see.
It's really about what is the use case. And I'll give you one more thing there. We know that consumers are trusting more highly regulated verticals with AI.
Yes.
Because there are rules in place, regulators are watching, these companies have a legacy of best practices. So the expectation, the assumption is they know what they are doing. And don't be surprised as we see that there is especially younger consumers, they would use generative AI as a financial advisor.
Yes.
And that is not a contradiction. This is really looking at what consumers are prioritizing when it comes to trust, who they trust, what their assumptions are, and that explains why they might trust more a financial advisor than even a lower risk use case where they don't have visibility whatsoever.
Yeah. So you mentioned actually within all the now the risk. So in your keynote, in the speech, in the presentation, you used Dante's The Count of Monte Cristo to illustrate how a single piece of false information you actually distort positive expectations about one or change the outcome. Do companies, or are they underestimating actually the deceptive use, the damage AI can do on the interaction for the customer experience or the customer's expectations? Is it really
underestimation, or is it B, if you're not aware that kind of one little thing could be damaging?
Yes, I think so. First of all, I don't think that the use of AI necessarily will drive to the shift in negative or positive expectation. Now, we are talking about AI that is unmanaged, AI that is not responsible, AI that is not the right use case for it. So the reality is that a lot of the issues are really about the business and the technical implementation of AI rather than the technology itself. And in fact, I loved yesterday, someone said, the problem is not necessarily a technology problem, is a business problem. And I agree with a lot of that, because typically when trust is damaged is because it was the wrong use case, a use case that really requires a lot of empathy, a use case that really requires very careful consideration of a lot of nuanced elements, or a use case that requires that a certain decision is communicated with a lot of, emotional, or what they say, the cognitive empathy, right? I need to understand your state of mind. I need to help you overcome that state of mind. You need a human. It's not an AI. And research is very clear on the selection of the use cases. If you're trying to implement AI on a very poor layer of data, the issue of hallucination, misalignment, inaccuracy is gonna go all over. So again, it's not necessarily the AI. The problem is really you don't have the data state. You're not prepared for that. So again, is a more kind of technical issue, but not to do with AI. The fact that sometimes, again, we use AI without thinking about what are the impacts of these and how do I manage some of the risks. The fact that you don't want to assess risk, and many organizations are kind of shying away from risk because, if I don't see it, then it's not there. That's wrong. Risk is still there. And if you choose not to assess it and not to manage it, it's going to make a lot of damage. So I won't say it's not necessarily that bring AI into the picture will always deliver a distrust. It's not like that. It depends how companies are doing it. Certainly, if it goes wrong, if it's unmanaged, if it's not responsibly implemented, the chances that you are going to damage trust are very, very high. And they can change the expectation of those customers. And if they don't trust you, we said, they will buy less from you, or they will stop buying from you altogether. They will stop advocating for a brand they don't trust. There is no point. And also one that I see very closely is, I want to be forgotten. I don't want you to have my data. I don't trust you with my data anymore. And so I will reduce my data sharing to the minimum necessary for a service or a product, but I am not there to engage with you more than that.
Yeah. I think as you mentioned as well, that it's in the 82% with a negative experience, the customers will kind of take an action.
82%, yes, that was specifically if a company breach your trust. So there are issues of trust there. Yes, 82% are going to change the relationship with a brand. 82% is a lot.
Yeah. And on the other hand, you just mentioned the data that your customer is willing to give you the company. If you trust the company, because you hear more and more, they're kind of actually rely on the first party data to actually understand the customer, next step for similarization, everything, so on. But in order to get actually the customer's trust, in order to get the data, I want to say, in order to get the data, you need to build the trust, isn't it?
It is very closely related. We know that, and again, there is use cases and data. If I lose trust in a brand, I'm gonna ask to be forgotten. I want you to delete my data. This also happens sometimes when I have a bad experience with a brand. Then I don't want you to have my data because I know that there is value in my data. I know you're gonna do something with it. So either I don't trust that you are gonna do anything useful for me with that data, so why I should give you my data? Or simply, well, I don't want to participate in whatever value you create with my data because I'm very unhappy with you as a brand. And so this is something that we see. It's interesting, the reliance on first-party data sits necessarily in an expectation of You ask for my data, you tell me what you do with it, you commit not to share that data with others without my understanding. You commit to keep it for that specific purpose that you told me. And ideally, you will share some of the value you create with my data back with me as a consumer. And I think this starts to be a proper relationship. And if you do this, then it's not only that I'm going to share my data with a business that does this well, but more likely I am also going to give permission to that business maybe to offer me hyper-personalized experiences. To have, maybe I am more likely to say, share your data with other businesses like you, because if I trust you and there is data here, consumers then trust a business, they are more likely to trust the other brands that associate with a business. So there is a lot of positives that come out of that trust building exercise around data.
Yeah. You mentioned in your keynote the advice that Dante got from the Italian. But so you showed us as well in the keynote at the end as well the advice and the math. First of all, what was your advice as a map to all the C's leaders out there? How they would bridge the gap for now of this trust as a distrust and actually building trust for the Tiffany.
I would say from the 90% of consumers today say that it's important to them that AI is used responsibly. So I think responsible AI is not negotiable. And again, we have heard a lot of these people saying, just use it, it doesn't matter, people don't care, the regulations are not there. If you take this approach, you're not going to be able to scale. And we have evidence of that now. Without robust governance, organizations struggle to go from pilot to production at scale because you cannot deploy without having an understanding of some of those risks you need to mitigate, some of the boundaries you need to build around it. So do it for your customers, do it for yourself. If you want to scale those AI pilots, go in with robust AI governance, build responsible AI. So this is definitely one element that is clearly there. And the other one, remember the definition, trust is an expectation of positive outcomes. Right? And so consumers must feel that AI, the AI that you as a company are bringing to the table, is working at their best interest. Yeah. And I think this is a very crucial aspect. And this goes into the way you position that AI, really how you align that AI. I think everybody has the experience to go to a website, maybe a retail website, an e-commerce website, and there is the chatbot. And the chatbot just wants you buy something, that you put something in the basket and you're going to spend your money with a brand. That doesn't work in my best interest as a consumer. That chatbot is optimized to make me buy something from you, and that is not necessarily my best interest, just to give an example. And so I think that is the shift. Of course, you as an organization, you implement AI to drive your goals, but your goals also have to account for what is the best interest of that consumer. How do I help them meet their own goals? And I think this is another fundamental piece to really close that trust gap that we see.
I would like to understand more about the responsible AI, because if I remember correctly, you built a framework with these 6 pillars. Can we dive into that? Can we explain that, how to kind of make companies or leaders?
Thank you for the opportunity to dive into the framework. And as I go through these elements, many people will feel like, of course, these are essential best practices. And this is on purpose. Is really to say, this is no science, rocket science. This is really basic practices and practices that the company should be following.
Yeah.
So,
Can I ask you then, if you say it's basic practice, why does it get forgotten then? So
because sometimes building the foundations requires a lot of work. And so, but without those foundations, you are not going to build on top. So this is really the essence of it. Data security and privacy. Every single time we ask consumers, what is the most important thing you worry about when AI is in front of you? They say, it's the privacy of my data, the security of my data. And when we ask business respondents in our surveys, and we say, what is the barrier to AI adoption? Data privacy is the number one concern they have. So data privacy and security is not negotiable. Make sure that keep your data safe. And we have been repeating this for many, many years. And if you're using customer data in AI projects, use it ethically. There is still a purpose you need to follow. There are some legal requirements you need to follow. There is still that transparency with the consumer when you collect and you say you're going to use the data in some ways, stick to that promise you have made. Second element, I think very talked about, is the human oversight. And make sure you understand which use cases are high risk, require a human to be involved, but also, as we said before, which use cases are very strong on empathy. And AI has emotional response, meaning if I'm sad, they're gonna play me back my sadness. You can have some chatbots that are always so enthusiastic, but that is not empathy. That is just, again, our emotional response is mimicking some sort of feelings. AI doesn't have today that necessary state of mind understanding needed to deliver real empathy. So use case with a lot of empathy, please do not use AI, it's not gonna work. Pull your human in. Fairness, if AI is making decision on your behalf, make sure there is no discrimination, there is no bias. Again, everybody understand the implication of missing these from a legal perspective, but also from a reputational perspective, clearly. Then we have safety and robustness. And again, make sure AI doesn't cause harm is basic, but also, the probabilistic nature of AI is challenges the idea of consistency, right? Because it changes all the time. But we need to have standards. If AI is working in routine scenarios, this is what we expect. This is the behavior that we expect. And also in exceptional circumstances, we should be already expecting a certain behavior. And this is important because if there are variations to that behavior from a security perspective, from a fairness perspective, we need to call those out. There is something doesn't work. We need to look into that. We have explainability and transparency. As part of that, we need to know how these decisions are made. And finally, we have accountability. If AI makes decisions, those decisions are still made on behalf of a company, and the company is fully liable for those decisions. And so that has to be very clearly understood. And those direct responsibility has to be there, and the companies have to be responsible for the decisions, the actions AI is taking. So
this probably is one of the big challenges to kind of really for the accountability. Here's accountability. What does a strong governance play with it? How does a company get a hold on that to kind of police direct the accountability within the company throughout all levels?
Yeah. So that's not an easy thing. I would say, let's start from the assumption we have some case law that explain that your chatbot is on your site. The chatbot promise customer to buy products at a certain price or is making certain promises. Companies are fully liable for that. So, and there is no question. If your AI is interacting with customers, says something, promises something, that is your company promising.
Yeah.
It's not, and so that then becomes, legally the company is bound to take ownership of what the chatbot said first. When it comes to company inside and really understanding who is accountable for what, I think it's important to start, again, basic stuff. Have this racist table in which you defined who is responsible, who is accountable, how these things are shaped up. I do think, and I'm seeing now, a lot of responsibility starting to go to the business and the business owners using certain kind of applications because, of course, that sits with their business. However, if there is an issue of security, if there is an issue with privacy, if there is an issue with compliance, that is very much still a responsibility of your CISOs, of your chief privacy officer, of your legal team. And in fact, I would say legal counsel is very much involved in these discussions as well. HR is another important stakeholder here. There are a lot of use cases that have to do with employees. then can create issues. And so HR must be part of this. Their accountability must be there as well. So it's really a shared responsibility initiative. This is something that companies have to have clear in their minds. There is not one person that is going to be necessarily the only accountable. Depends on the risks. Accountability is shared among different stakeholders.
Yes. Coming back to the governance, you said there needs to be a robust, strong governance. What does that mean? How do you build it in a company? Yes. What?
Yeah, it's I would love to have a perfect recipe for it that I don't have. So there are some companies that, and we made some example. Unilever is one of those that we mentioned this morning. There are companies that have started from a very long-standing commitment to data governance. And that is why companies have gone into AI governance. AI governance is much broader than data governance, especially as we move into agentic AI. But definitely there is a very fundamental part of it that hinges on good data management practices. So if you have good data management practice when it comes to your unstructured data, you have programs that defines responsibilities, how you access, your data is trusted, your data is good quality, there is a good starting point. If you have the practices, start your journey from there. There are companies like ING, we talked about them this morning too, very strong commitment on ethical use of data, responsible AI, privacy was at the core of what they were doing, security, and so they started from there. So let's expand those principles to really also cover those AI use cases. That might be another route, and you start from there and you start those risk assessment. Okay, if there is personal data in this AI use case, we might need to build a very specific way of assessing and mitigating, managing those risks. It's all about finding what can really help you start these, not from scratch, but where do you have excellence existing in your organization that can be a way to really move forward. If you have strong data science practices, again, that is one of the places you can go to. And there are other organizations that would start from a very basic process of looking at AI use cases, create the inventory, look at the AI use cases, have a high-level risk assessment to start determining, is this use case high risk because of the data it consumes, because of the particular population it targets, because of decision it makes? And so if it's high risk, you need to have impact, then you have to follow very specific, kind of risk assessment and mitigation plans. Is this a risk that we can accept as an organization? It just needs some guidelines in place, and you can do that. Is this a privacy-related concern? So data privacy impact assessments, data protection impact assessment to be in place. Or is a very kind of minimal risk use case, and we feel comfortable that we can run as long as it follows the boundaries that were there before AI and go. So, but it's really giving organization opportunity to start assessing the risk. That's another way you start building the governance as well.
Yeah. So the risk is actually the key factor I see as well, whether it's kind of managing the governance, managing which level of accountability you need to have in the decision making. Is it C-level management? Is it within the departments? I hear. So I would like to come to the end, because at the end of your presentation, the keynote, you mentioned that the count of Motok is still it gets the listen, wait, and calls. You argue that this is precisely wrong response to nowadays for companies facing us of us. What is it for you now, your concrete action seats that you should take as they want to? Or you take the whole thing really into the future?
I think, well, we mentioned some of them. Gone with a responsible AI approach, build it, work on that AI governance. It may be time consuming, it must be not as exciting as deploying the latest model. I understand that, but it is work that you need to do. So that governance piece is fundamental.
Yeah.
Make sure that you are looking at the best quality of data you can, work on the data, because it's gonna fit a lot of those use cases. Absolutely. And then start to think about how agents are going to change the picture. And I say this because I've seen companies dealing with generative AI use cases. And yes, we talk about governance and we know there are risks and we know all of these, and they still very often feel like, all right, I can run with generative AI use cases. I think about the governance later. Again, not what I think is the right thing to do, but I've seen this happening. In the second the company deals with agentic AI, and now you have agents that are gonna make decisions, interact with third-party systems, agents that are able to completely disregard the boundaries that you have put in place, that transparency and visibility and control is not anymore something that you can do later. If you don't have that, it's going to be a disaster. And so I think as you are thinking today about your use cases, have a look at what is coming, because that will reset also the level of expectation that you need to have around those governance elements. So work for the use case you have today, responsible AI governance, watch what's coming, because that is gonna really give you a sense of the horizon in front of you, and I think and prioritize that customer aspect. Make sure it works in their best interest. That is
So
really.
the waiting hard might not be the best interest for the companies.
And yeah, not for a company, not for a customer, for anybody. Absolutely, absolutely.
So more the acting, Matt, you need to be aware of how this close the gap between.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that the fine of the last slide was really about act and lead. And we talked about, we have talked a lot about the act, what action you want to do. But I want to say also lead means do not follow what you think everybody else is doing. And I think that in the area of governance, we have seen a lot of followers, but very few leaders. Those that have been leaders with the governance elements have become real and true leaders on their AI implementation, the use case, and their success. Be bold, lead, do not follow. And I think that's the way you are going to really differentiate and grow with AI.
Thank you very much, Enza, for sharing your insights.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.